Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestle News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well, having a good Tuesday. Of course, it's the day after Monday Night Raw, so there is a ton of news stories to get into. So let's get straight into the news stories today. Let's start off with something that didn't happen on Monday Night Raw last night, but it came out yesterday, and it's such an interesting story. I had to talk about it because it was revealed that WWE originally had plans for Chairman and CEO Vince McMahon to team up with his son Shane McMahon at WrestleMania 34 in 2018. Now, this was revealed by Kevin Owens when he spoke with Inside the Ropes and Sporf's Kenny McIntosh yesterday. And he revealed the original plans for WrestleMania 34 had Vince McMahon and Shane teaming up to face Owens and Sami Zayn. This is what Kevin Owens said. He said, quote, "Yeah, that feud was really cool. I wish it could have led to more, honestly, but who wouldn't want to feel that way? I think it could have, and I think it almost did. I really think at one point there was a chance that it was going to be me and Sami Zayn against Shane and Vince at WrestleMania, which would have been incredible. But Vince, I remember one of those things he had told me was, I can't run WrestleMania and focus on a match at the same time." Now, of course, the match ended up being Shane McMahon and the returning Daniel Bryan to defeat Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. Per the stipulation, Owens and Sami Zayn would have been rehired to SmackDown had they won the match. Of course, Owens and Shane McMahon began feuding in August of 2017, several months before WrestleMania, but in one iconic segment on SmackDown, Vince McMahon did get involved in the feud on a couple of occasions, including on the September 12, 2017 episode of SmackDown, where Kevin Owens hit Vince McMahon with a headbutt after Vince McMahon announced Shane McMahon versus Owens for Hell in a Cell in October. Now, this is also what Kevin Owens said. He said Vince felt like his best position was not to be in the ring, you know. But then also, it also was the perfect situation for Daniel Bryan's return. He got cleared medically and the storyline was already in progress. He was already so heavily involved in the storyline just because him and Shane were running SmackDown together. And obviously, that was an incredible thing to be a part of Daniel's return, especially in the building where he won the title at WrestleMania 30. So it was great. Now, Vince McMahon at that point, Vince McMahon at the moment still is in his 70s. He would have been in his 70s, I believe, at WrestleMania 34 in 2018 as well. Vince McMahon hasn't wrestled since the October 8, 2012 edition of Monday Night Raw, where he fought then WWE Champion CM Punk to a no contest. Obviously, he had fights with him outside of the ring since then. But he last teamed up with his son, Shane McMahon, at the 2007 Judgment Day pay-per-view. This was in a 3-on-1 handicap match against current WWE United States Champion Bobby Lashley. It was a 3-on match that saw Vince McMahon, Shane McMahon, and Umaga lose to Lashley with Vince's ECW World Heavyweight Championship on the line. Vince McMahon retained Vince McMahon won the match, technically retained the match when Lashley pinned Shane. Very confusing, very confusing. But it's a story that I love because it's just so Vince McMahon, isn't it? It's so Vince McMahon that even in his 70s at WrestleMania 34, at one point there were plans for Vince McMahon to get in the ring and wrestle. What that would have looked like, I don't know. Would it have been a car crash? Probably. You know, Vince McMahon, for a guy in his 70s, is in better shape than most people just in general, let alone people in their 70s. Obviously, as Kevin Owens mentioned, instead we got the return of Daniel Bryan after he was medically cleared, so it all worked out for the best. Which one would have I preferred to see? Of course, you wanted to see Daniel Bryan return to the ring. I don't think anyone really has a desire to see Vince McMahon, a man in his 70s, get in the ring and start taking bumps from Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. The segment on SmackDown, as I mentioned, was iconic because it really was an unbelievable segment then just to see Vince McMahon, again, in his 70s, getting a headbutt from Kevin Owens and getting a frog splash from Kevin Owens. I remember at the time, the social media just exploded the next day when Kevin Owens did that, and people still talk about it 3 years later. So if they would have had a match involving Vince McMahon, it would have been crazy and it would have been unique, but it worked out for the best, right? It worked out for the best. Nevertheless, it's a story that is really interesting, and it's one of those great hypothetical what-ifs that I guess will live on and on now. It'll be like, what if Daniel Bryan didn't get cleared and it was Vince McMahon? Now, the way that Kevin Owens is talking is saying that it was shot down pretty early because, like Vince said, I can't run WrestleMania, the show of the size and stature that WrestleMania has become. I can't run that show and focus on a match at the same time. Now, of course, in previous years, Vince McMahon has done matches at WrestleMania, right? WrestleMania 17 versus Shane McMahon, WrestleMania 22 versus Shawn Michaels, WrestleMania 26 against Bret the Hitman Hart, and yes, he hasn't, I don't know his involvement in running the show, as it were, at that point. Nowadays, we know that in 2020, and even going back to 2018, Vince McMahon micromanages everything, and at that period of time in 2018, and probably going forward, once we get fans back into the stadiums for events like WrestleMania, those shows go like 5 or 6 hours, and Vince McMahon manages everything. You know, it was only at WrestleMania 30 that he actually left WrestleMania to go to the hospital with The Undertaker. I think that's the most recent time, or the only time Vince McMahon hasn't actually been in the building when it comes to WrestleMania actually taking place. So I don't know how far those plans have got. Kevin Owens is kind of hinting that they didn't get that far. But nevertheless, it's such a fascinating story. It really is a fascinating story, and it's something I wanted to kick off with today because it's just so interesting. It's just so fascinating. So let's talk about Monday Night Raw last night, specifically the mind games continuing between Randy Orton and Bray Wyatt on Monday Night Raw last night. Now, Monday Night Raw before TLC, of course TLC is this Sunday on the WWE Network, saw Bray Wyatt appear inside the ring inside the WWE Thunderdome with his Firefly Funhouse puppets for a special field trip to the WWE Thunderdome. Now, after addressing The Fiend's surprising appearance on Raw last week during the match between Bray Wyatt and Randy Orton, Wyatt went on to crack some puns about the 14-time world champion, did some jokes about measuring vipers in inches because they don't have feet, etc. Very funny, very humorous. But Randy Orton then appeared on the Titantron and admitted that The Fiend got the better of him last week, but the same won't happen at TLC on Sunday. Then he played into Bray Wyatt's mind games and character because he offered him a chance to play hide and seek, which of course Bray Wyatt accepted. Why wouldn't you accept a game of hide and seek? So Bray Wyatt then actually interacted with several WWE superstars backstage in person, something we haven't really seen. He bumped into the likes of Riddle and R-Truth in some humorous segments before finally finding his old Wyatt family rocking chair in an empty and dark room. Now, this caused a shift in the mindset and mentality of Bray Wyatt, some flashbacks. Bray Wyatt went into the room, he sat on the chair, and then Randy Orton attacked him from behind. He beat up the Firefly Funhouse leader and threw him inside of a box. The Viper then went all No Mercy 2006 and poured gasoline all over the box and set it on fire. A possible throwback to when he burned down, of course, the Wyatt family cabin as well in 2017 as part of this original feud with Bray Wyatt. And as Randy Orton saw the box burning, suddenly it opened up and who else came out of it but The Fiend, who attacked Orton with the mandible claw. Now, the segment ended with Orton passing out to the mandible claw as The Fiend looked into the camera and continued to laugh with his maniacal laugh. This was, I felt, actually a really fun segment. I know some people, I've seen some comments on social media saying they're not really into this Wyatt or Fiend versus Randy Orton storyline. I like it. I like the way that it's played off the 2017 feud with the Randy Orton infiltrating the Wyatt family. I like that. I thought an interesting part of the whole Bray Wyatt dynamic on Raw last night was his interactions with some of the other WWE superstars. I felt like they were walking a very fine line, because I don't want to seem hypocritical with this, but first of all, the concept of the whole field trip to the WWE Thunderdome with the Firefly Funhouse puppets, we've seen them in the Thunderdome numerous times, so I didn't really get that concept because we've seen it. As far as Bray Wyatt appearing in person, I like it and I don't like it. And it might sound like I'm sitting on the fence here. I like it because I feel like it's an evolution of the character. He can't stay in the Firefly Funhouse forever because there needs to be evolution, there needs to be growth from a character, and there needs to be various interactions and settings that a character appears in. So I like that aspect of it, and I like Bray Wyatt appearing outside of the Funhouse, actually appearing in the ring, appearing with other WWE superstars backstage, and all of them being very confused and standoffish of him because, quite frankly, they haven't seen him that often backstage. I like that side of it. However, once again, I do feel like they have to walk a very fine line when it comes to that, because the beauty of the Bray Wyatt character is that we don't see him that often inside of a WWE ring cutting a promo. We don't see him hardly ever backstage interacting with the other WWE superstars that he's not feuding with. So I felt like it was a very fine line. I felt like they probably got it just about right. I enjoyed the segment with Riddle. I don't enjoy the changes to the Riddle character, this whole comedic thing. As I mentioned previously, it's a kiss of death when it comes to Matt Riddle. He's typecast now in the mind of Vince McMahon. I enjoyed the segment with R-Truth. R-Truth segments for me, the comedic stuff is a bit hit and miss, but that's just comedy in general. I enjoyed that, but I don't want to see Bray Wyatt, the Firefly Funhouse version of him, appearing inside of a WWE ring or backstage every single week. I feel like if they find the right ratio of it, it can be good, and it's kind of necessary. As I said, the character needs to evolve. But I feel like they got it just right, and I liked the reveal of the Fiend coming out of the burning box. I felt like that was fun. And again, it's a throwback to Randy Orton burning down the Wyatt family compound in 2017. It's also a throwback to essentially what happened when Randy Orton tried to burn The Undertaker in 2006, and then The Undertaker came out, was it 2005? The years that kind of go together. I think 2005 actually. When he tried to burn The Undertaker in 2005 at No Mercy, and then eventually The Undertaker comes out of the very same casket, Survivor Series later that year. It was kind of a play on that, which itself was a play on The Undertaker being burnt alive by Kane in 1998. Everything's recycled in the world of pro wrestling, isn't it? Nevertheless, I liked the segment. I liked the Bray Wyatt narrative they told throughout the show. And I'm excited for the Randy Orton Fiend match. As I mentioned, it's one of the matches I'm really looking forward to the most at TLC. Yes, they're going to be great TLC matches, and Drew McIntyre and AJ Styles and Roman Reigns versus Kevin Owens. But in terms of story here, I've really enjoyed this. I feel like it's been well done. So I enjoyed the Bray Wyatt stuff last night. I thought it was a lot of fun. Continuing to talk about Raw, Jackson Ryker. Now, we spoke about Jackson Ryker last week when he made his return to WWE television on Main Event with Elias, but Jackson Ryker made his official WWE Raw debut during last night's episode on the USA Network. Now, of course, as I mentioned, it was reported and revealed last week how Jackson Ryker returned to WWE TV during a segment with Elias on Main Event. The segment saw Elias talk about surviving the Symphony of Destruction loss to Jeff Hardy and becoming extraordinary, then having visions about Ryker. The Main Event segment was interrupted then by WWE 24/7 champion R-Truth and his group of contenders, and it ended with Jackson Ryker dropping Akira Tozawa with a clothesline. Last night on Monday Night Raw, though, it was essentially the same thing. It was essentially a repeat of what happened on Main Event. Elias opened the segment last night, talked about how he had visions of his purpose following his recent loss to Jeff Hardy, and visions for the aforementioned Jackson Ryker. Elias then referred to Ryker as a man who knows deep in his heart all about universal truth, which is that WWE stands for Walk with Elias. Ryker then cut a promo about how Elias' music has changed him and he's been reborn by the universal truth. Elias then continued to dedicate his next performance to Lana, who had just been taken out by WWE Women's Tag Team Champion Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler. But before he could demonstrate his healing power of music, he was interrupted by R-Truth. They did some comedy and talking about the segment last week on Main Event. Elias then began his performance, but Tozawa, Eric, Drew Gulak, the Lucha House Party ran down and chaos broke out at ringside. Eric rolled Grand Metalik into the ring, but Jackson Ryker leveled him with a big clothesline. Eric then rolled Tozawa into the ring. Ryker launched him back out of the ring onto Eric and others at ringside. The segment then ended with R-Truth running away with his title as Ryker chokeslammed Metalik into the mat. Now, of course, this was Ryker's first main roster TV appearance since being pulled from SmackDown following his pro-Donald Trump comments on Twitter back in late May, just as the Forgotten Sons were actually being introduced and pushed to the SmackDown tag team title scene on Fox. Now, in recent weeks, Wesley Blake and Steve Cutler of the Forgotten Sons were brought back to WWE TV on SmackDown. They're now in an alliance with King Corbin. They're using the name the Knights of the Lone Wolf for their tag team name. It's also been reported that last week's segment on WWE Main Event with Elias and Jackson Ryker was done to sort of gauge reactions of a potential team with Elias and Ryker. Obviously, considering that they appeared last night on Raw, it looks like WWE is satisfied with that pairing going forward. You know, when it comes to this, it's the same thing that I said last week with Jackson Ryker. It's a very difficult situation, I think, for WWE. I don't agree with his comments, and not to get too political here, but I don't agree with his comments, and I think the majority of the WWE locker room doesn't agree with his comments either. That doesn't mean that he should be fired, because once you start firing people on the base of supporting a certain political belief, it's very shaky ground and you set a precedent. Like I said, I very much don't agree with his comments. I was, like many people, upset by them, and I'm not even from the United States. But it's difficult. Can you fire him for that? Ultimately, you probably can't. WWE have fired people for less. I think that's an important thing to point out there. But can you fire him for pro-political comments? It's difficult. It's very, very difficult. So it was a difficult situation for WWE. I really felt for Blake and Cutler in this situation because I felt like they hadn't done anything wrong, and I was glad to see them return to WWE TV. Regardless of what happens with Jackson Ryker going forward, that incident will always follow him around, and he will always have residual heat for it. I guess with the people backstage, I don't know if Jackson Ryker has since apologized or whatever backstage. Again, it's a situation whereby does he have to apologize, for expressing his beliefs? I don't know. It's a shaky ground, and I don't think that WWE possibly could fire him. I didn't expect to see him back on TV. Like I said last week, I expected him just to disappear from TV, and once his contract expired, he wouldn't be re-signed. I felt like that would be the situation. Nevertheless, looks like they're going to try and do something with him. Obviously, he had a good run with the likes of in TNA as Gunner, and now obviously I think his potential there, but it was all about the heat and the reception backstage. The previous reports were that nobody wanted to work with him because of the comments he made previously. So it's a difficult situation. We'll see how it goes. The heat when it comes to Jackson Ryker isn't going to die down anytime soon, backstage or from the fans. As I mentioned, it's going to be something that follows them around. So it'll be interesting to see if they can overcome that. Personally, I'm not sure you can. But at the same time, again, you can't fire someone for political beliefs unless they are legitimately racist, offensive, discriminatory, anything like that, which technically they were not. So that's the issue there, really, isn't it? Is that, can you fire someone for supporting a political party? I don't know. So that's the situation there. They're gonna persist with it. We'll see how it goes. Now, continuing with Raw last night as well, Lana has been pulled from the WWE TLC pay-per-view. Now, Lana, of course, was scheduled to team with Raw Women's Champion Asuka to challenge for the WWE Women's Tag Team Championships against champions Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler at Sunday's event. But last night on Raw, we saw Lana defeat Nia Jax in a huge upset. But after the match, WWE did an injury angle where Jax and Baszler took out Lana in the middle of the ring, focusing on her arm and leg until her partner Asuka made the save. Now, Baszler later wrestled Dana Brooke, but Dana Brooke won by disqualification due to interference from Jax. Raw color commentator, or play-by-play announcer rather, Tom Phillips announced during the match that Lana had been taken to a local hospital with, quote, devastating injuries to her elbow and leg from the attack by Jax and Baszler earlier on in the show. It was also announced that Lana is now unable to compete at TLC. But following the match with Dana Brooke and Shayna Baszler, the post-match angle saw Nia Jax and Baszler attack Dana Brooke until Mandy Rose, of course she was out of an injury recently, make her return and even the odds with a kendo stick. So it looks like at the moment that either Mandy Rose or Dana Brooke could be teaming with Asuka to challenge Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler at Sunday's TLC pay-per-view. That hasn't been confirmed. The announcers teased on commentary that Asuka will end up picking Mandy Rose or Brooke for her new partner. So obviously it's strange. I think, in fairness, I mean, maybe I might seem a bit like a hypocrite here, but I felt like the whole Lana announce table spot was weird, and it was a way to get her over as a babyface. WWE, you have to credit them when they're getting things right. Lana does have this huge element of sympathy to her. It is kind of working at the moment, whether it's the bullies in Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler, the leaving her out at Survivor Series, yet Lana won the match, Lana picking up an upset victory last night, and the WWE documentary that Lana had on the network as well. That absolutely added to the sympathetic babyface and getting the crowd behind Lana, even virtually, but at home and on social media. Lana's she's getting there. She's getting there as a sympathetic babyface, which, considering what her character was earlier this year, is absolutely insane. But they're kind of doing the job, and as a viewer, you did feel bad for her being taken out of the match at TLC. Now, I think in some form, she's obviously, I think, going to still play into it. I think she has to, right? She still has to play into it at some point. So I don't think, they're obviously not going to say that Lana's going to be Asuka's tag team partner, but I could see a scenario where Lana gets involved on Sunday. They're speculating that Dana Brooke and Mandy Rose could be Asuka's tag team partner. I think some people need to maybe think about Charlotte Flair. We know that there are plans for Charlotte Flair to return soon. The reports are that they are a lock. Whatever those plans are, we don't know, and we don't know the timetable for her to return. Obviously, it's going to be soon as we head into Royal Rumble season and then WrestleMania season, so we know that Charlotte Flair is returning soon, but we don't know when. Obviously, Charlotte Flair was written off of TV back in June by who? By Nia Jax, who attacked her, and they had the whole collarbone injury, which was the way to write Charlotte Flair off TV. What a perfect tag team partner for Asuka. Then Charlotte Flair to actually try and redeem herself and try and get some revenge against Nia Jax from the injury. Plus, during that whole time which Charlotte Flair got written off of TV, she was also kind of feuding with Asuka as well on TV. So it would kind of be enemies turned tag team partners, but then I guess at the end of it, you could also have Charlotte Flair turn on Asuka and cement herself once again as a heel. There's lots you could do there. So I wouldn't rule out Charlotte Flair there as a potential tag team partner for Asuka on Sunday. Let's also talk about Braun Strowman. Now, Braun Strowman is currently off of TV with a knee injury. He just had surgery on a knee injury. He was also scheduled to face Drew McIntyre at TLC for the WWE Championship before the injury was apparent, and obviously plans changed. McIntyre's now facing AJ Styles, but Braun Strowman has showed off an incredible before and after picture of a recent body transformation over the last 2 years. When comparing the two pictures, it's incredibly obvious the amount of effort and time that Braun Strowman has put into improving his physique. This is what Braun Strowman said about it on Instagram. He said, quote, "Man, it's amazing what you can do when you believe in yourself. The pic on the right was about 2 or so years ago when I was battling bad depression, drinking all the time, not sleeping, and going half-assed through the motions at the gym. You control your own destiny, and you can make your life whatever you want it if you're willing to put in the work, because no one's going to hand you that bleep. You have to know when to walk away from things that aren't good for you, and that's what I did, and I'll be damned if I'm ever looking back. I think the craziest thing here is that it's only 35 pounds difference in body weight in the last 2 pics." So obviously, as I mentioned, Braun Strowman is currently off TV at the moment. He's kayfabe suspended after he attacked authority figure Adam Pearce on Raw a couple of weeks ago. So we don't know the return table for Braun Strowman. Nevertheless, he looks to be in the shape of his career, which is always incredibly inspiring. It's difficult to think that they're the same person. It really is. And look, whenever I see things like this, it's incredibly inspiring. Anyone that ever undergoes a body transformation or has battled, mental health stuff and manages to come through the other side, it's always incredibly inspiring. So congratulations to Braun Strowman on that. And finally, let's end on a little bit of holiday festivity, because the AEW stars have recreated iconic scenes from A Christmas Story for TNT and TBS Marathon. Now, several AEW wrestlers have reenacted scenes from the legendary A Christmas Story movie to promote the annual 24-hour marathon of the movie, which will air on TNT and TBS on December 24 and December 25. AEW has announced that the scenes will run as part of online awareness to raise awareness for AEW's non-profit partner Culture City. The shoot featured AEW wrestlers as characters from the movie: Chris Jericho as Santa Claus, Frankie Kazarian as the head elf, MJF as Ralphie, as you can see in the picture there, Cody and Brandy Rhodes as Mr. and Mrs. Parker, Eddie Kingston as Schwartz, Scorpio Sky as Randy, Ortiz as Flick, Britt Baker as Miss Shields, Ricky Starks as Farkas, Ali as Dill, Luchasaurus as the Freight Man, Jim Ross and Tony Schiavone will be handling the narration and stage direction. The scenes were filmed in the ring at Daly's Place in Jacksonville, Florida. So a nice bit of holiday festivity, and also it raises awareness for a great cause. Be sure to check it out. It'll be very, very, just the behind the scene pictures are funny. I don't think the full, as I mentioned, the full scenes have been released yet. I think they're going to be released during the December 24 and 25 marathon. Nevertheless, it's always hilarious to see them do this kind of stuff, so I'm excited to see that. Also, WWE kind of did their own version, not of this specifically, but there was a promo package that aired, or a vignette that aired on Raw last night with Randy Orton, Drew McIntyre and others beating up 2020 for being a terrible year, which I thought was quite interesting. It was bizarre. But nevertheless, it was interesting, so that was a lot of fun. But of course, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on all the news stories that we have spoken about today? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about WWE, AEW, Impact Wrestling, all that fun stuff. So get involved with the community in the comment section below. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button. Really does help us out here on YouTube, go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video, along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.